Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Mike Prokopik, Editor-in-Chief at Chief Learning Officer Magazine, and I'm glad that you're joining us for this afternoon session. I hope you all have had a good day so far and are looking forward to a great afternoon as well. It's been really uplifting to see all of you engaging in this and engaging in the different chats and in different ways that our community of Chief Learning Officers comes together. It really does feel like a community when we're at moments like this and everybody's sharing practices and sharing some of their insights. So I appreciate you all taking time at what is a very busy time for many of you to be a part of this. And I especially want to thank many of our speakers who are doing that as well today. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce our speaker right now. And she's I think somebody who has a really interesting background. Obviously, she's a very accomplished CLO, but she's actually a computer science and AI graduate. So she came out of the computer science AI world, became an entrepreneur, was a learning leader at companies like BlackRock, and is now the Chief Learning Officer at Kraft Heinz. And what I think is most impressive to me about Pamay Bassi, who I'm going to turn it over to in just a moment, is just her commitment to lifelong learning. That there's never a pause. That there's always something new and different that she's learning, and that passion that she brings for her own personal development is something that she brings to her organizations as well. So really excited to hear from Pamay. I'm going to be stepping into the background here momentarily, but I want to encourage all of you who are attending with us, be sure to say hello in the chat. It's always great to hear where people are from, who they're, and see you all engage with one another. And then if you do have questions for Pamay, drop those into the Q&A function as well. Pamay is going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for her to answer some questions. And I'll field those questions for her and pitch them up to her. So with that, let me go ahead and turn it over to you, Pamay. Welcome to the CLO Symposium.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to share my screen and get started. As Mike mentioned, yeah, my name is Pamay, and I am a lifelong learner. I love laughter, words, big ideas, and serving my community. And I do serve as a Chief Learning Officer at the Kraft Heinz company. And as many of you know, I'm sure there's some CLOs in the crowd. My responsibilities are twofold. First, I drive the strategy and training and learning initiatives through our corporate university, which we at Kraft Heinz call Ownerversity, as it's built on one of our foundational values, which is ownership. Second, I drive a culture of lifelong learning, creativity, and curiosity, making sure that every employee has what they need to be successful, and that everyone knows that learning can be their superpower, and that a commitment to learning can help them to be great in their current roles and help them to grow great careers. I truly believe that if we enable people to create a learning practice, we help them learn how to learn. We help them learn how to determine what they need to learn. We help them to accelerate their learning curves, and that serves learners, whether they are reskilling, upskilling, or intentionally or unintentionally disrupting their lives or careers for the purpose of advancement. So today, we're going to talk about lifelong learning as a catalyst and a tool for transformation. And the times that we're all collectively facing right now demands transformation. Times of adversity, like the moment in human history that we are experiencing right now, can be catalysts. These times are serving as an agent that provoke or speed significant change or action. And also, all of you, my friends, are catalysts. Each of you is a person that can quickly cause change or action. And I believe strongly that one of the best ways to navigate these times is for each of us to learn our way through it, to learn our way out of it. We're all called to unleash our learning superpower to help ourselves and to help those who depend on us, to maintain a laser focus on who we want to be in the midst of the storm and use that to direct our learning practice. And so if you're not sure if you're really the one to be a catalyst, I'm going to do a quick quiz. I'm going to ask a series of questions. Feel free to just ponder these questions silently, or you can type in the chat whatever you feel. If one of these questions applies to you, or if it's related to something that that's on your mind, go ahead and type or just think. And so I'll start at the top. Do you have goals and targets at work? Do you lead or manage a team? Do you face challenges every day? Do you help others to face challenges every day, personally, professionally, wherever in the world? Would you like to do a good job in your current role? Do you believe that your work has an impact on your company's success? And finally, would you like to grow a great career? If you answered yes to any of those prompts, then yes, you can be a catalyst. Yes, you are the catalyst. All of us have full agendas, concerns, and deadlines. So we are the perfect people to model what it looks like to embrace being a lifelong learner, to be a catalyst as we create learning cultures in our lives, in our families, our communities, and in our companies. We are the perfect people to model how to commit to a regular learning practice, to create a learning habit. As learning professionals, we are the perfect people to walk in the shoes of our learners, to really get knee deep into the experience that they have every time they try to search for a course in our LMSs, our corporate universities, to find learning materials that are relevant, to complete interesting, engaging e-learning. We are the perfect people to volunteer to feel the pain of our learners and find ways to address that pain. Each of us should be able to speak with ultimate confidence about the learning options that we offer. That is, to know from experience that there is useful and transformative content within the walls of our LMSs, our corporate universities, and being delivered in our programs. And to share that knowledge with each and every employee in our organizations, in real life and in the virtual sphere. We all need to drink our own Kool-Aid. Because the way that I see it, if we're responsible for motivating others to learn and invest in their career development and we're not learning ourselves, how can we possibly be effective? If we're not taking advantage of the tools and platforms and courses and training and learning experiences that we're offering to our employees, how can we expect them to take advantage of those very same things? So now is the time that I get to tell you a story. I want to tell you about a Kraft Heinz success story in the making. In February of 2019, just after I joined Kraft Heinz, I created a slide that included a value proposition for L&D. It stated that our learning and development offerings enable each employee to learn like an owner so they can execute with excellence in their current roles, accelerate their learning curve, and grow great careers. Much of that should sound familiar to you, but there's one piece that might be new. Learn like an owner. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that means. It means three things. It means that we expect every employee to seek out high-impact learning experiences, to commit to a learning practice, even if it's just a few minutes a day, and to encourage others to do the same, whether it's your peers, you're a people manager encouraging your direct reports, or a senior leader exerting influence across the company. Everyone is expected to contribute to a culture of learning. But the question follows, how to do that? As the company's strategic driver of learning and development, how do we show people how to learn like an owner when everyone has so many competing priorities? What I did was to start a campaign with two hashtags, learn like an owner and make time for learning. I made a promise to my organization that every day for a year, I would visit my corporate university and read an article, take a course, attend an in-person learning event, make time for learning. At the end of January of this year, I successfully completed 365 consecutive days of learning and sharing what I've learned with my organization. Sometimes that learning moment was a few minutes, and sometimes a few hours, and often, most of the time, somewhere in between. After every learning experience, I posted to our internal social network, which we call the Catch App, because what else would we call it? Letting people know the topic and the material that I focused on for the day. And just to give you a sense of the usage, the penetration of this app, 66% of salaried employees at Kraft Heinz have downloaded the Catch App. I started to invite others from all over the organization to learn with me. Read an article, let's discuss it. Take a course, let's unpack it. Take a picture of us learning together and post it. This campaign allowed me to model how to make time for learning. As time went by, I started seeing a few people catching on, liking my posts, using the hashtags, posting about their own learning experiences. And just to break this down for you, there were a few important elements of each post which take the same format day after day. First, the hashtags. Learn like an owner refers to the value proposition that I just explained earlier. Wanting learners to seek out high impact learning experiences, commit to a learning practice, even if it's just a few minutes a day, and enables others to do the same. Somewhere in the body of each post, I also included the hashtag, make time for learning. Second, I always noted what day it was. I didn't actually tell people for weeks that I was doing this for a year, but I wanted to point out that it was a daily learning practice for me. And finally, I noted the time spent. I wanted to share that you only need a few minutes to meet your learning commitment. Most of the days, because my to-do list is packed and I'm in meetings all day and my life is full, just like all of you and the life of all of our fellow employees, my learning time was between 1 and 15 minutes. Sometimes, of course, it was longer. If I was in a face-to-face course, it could take a whole day or a number of days. Over 365 days of this journey, I tracked just under 15,000 minutes of learning. And you can see the breakdown of that time. About half the time in live learning sessions, about a fifth of the time taking LinkedIn learning courses, and then the rest of the time spent reading articles in Harvard Business Reviews, books, articles, completing our own custom digital Kraft Heinz company digital courses and listening to podcasts. And I can imagine that if I started this in February of this year, then the distribution will be very different, given that all of us, I'm sure, are engaged in trying to make sure that our employees are taking advantage of digital learning opportunities. You can see also in this word cloud some of the things that I focused on. Leadership, workplace culture, and performance being the top three, which is, I think, understandable, because as we're learning, we should be focusing on the things that we need in order to be successful in our current roles. But I was doing other things like learning about our business, marketing, R&D, finance, etc. It was my first year, so I was learning as much about the business as I could. I also wrote a list of 365 things I learned from 365 days of learning, and I'll share some of those things with you by the end of our time today. And I generally write articles about them and share them on LinkedIn if you'd like to check that out afterwards. But before my year of learning ended, it was clear that the movement needed to expand. It wasn't just about me, it needed to be about all of the learners in my organization. So at the beginning of September of last year, we launched a global Learn Like an Owner campaign, primarily to promote the culture of learning at Kraft Heinz and to encourage others to join the movement, to challenge employees to commit to learning, champion those who had already done so, and leverage leadership support to encourage participation. As part of the launch, we gave individuals 4 options for participation. The campaign took place from September to December of last year, the last 4 months of the year, and the participation levels were bronze, silver, gold, and freestyle. And you can see 15 minutes per month, 30 minutes per month, an hour per month, or freestyle for those of the learners who wanted to just make up whatever they wanted. I just wanted people learning. I didn't want to be restrictive. All told, 500 Kraft Heinz employees made a learning commitment in Q4 of last year, completing 3,000 hours of learning in 4 months. Our Chief People Officer made a learning commitment, and our CEO did as well. He also sent messages out to senior leaders across the organization to encourage them to do the same. Then last month, we launched the 2020 version of that campaign. In a week, we surpassed the 500 commitments that we had seen in Q4 of last year. And to date, we're just shy of 900 with 900 commitments, with new ones trickling in every day. This year, we also added a people manager pledge to encourage people managers to pledge to support their direct reports in making time for learning. To date, we have 300 signed pledges from people managers. Momentum continues to grow, as does our learning culture. No doubt this movement is being helped by the fact that so many of our salaried employees are working from home and looking for ways to learn their way through this current global challenge. But the beautiful thing is they know how to do it because we're over a year into this campaign. Last week, we launched a Learn Like an Owner speaker series, inviting thought leaders to share actionable information that can help employees through these difficult times. So, what are the takeaways? What are the steps to take if you're trying to transform yourself and your employees into lifelong learners and create a powerful and functional learning culture? How do you embrace your role as a catalyst? What do you need to do, you may be asking? First, I encourage you to embrace the value proposition. I consider it a contract between learners and learning professionals on my team throughout the organization. We expect learners to take ownership of their learning and development, knowing that the benefit will come to them as they execute in their current roles with excellence, accelerate their learning curves, and grow great careers. And number two of the 365 things that I learned from my 365 days of learning is that this often requires you to start before you're ready. There is a need to believe that learning is good and useful, and there's no time like the present to develop a strong learning culture. Start while conversations are taking place about whether or not it will be possible to convince people managers and senior leaders to set aside dedicated time for learning. Start while you're in conversations with your learning analytics teams about how to measure impact to the business in a clear and convincing way. Start now, as employees are waiting to be engaged, and we are seeing that this is a way to do that. And next, commit to learn like an owner. You make the commitment. You first seek out high impact learning experiences yourself. Commit to your own learning practice, even if it's just a few minutes a day, and encourage others to do the same. Everyone needs to contribute to a culture of learning. There are so many doors through which you can find information and learning that can help as we aim to continuously improve our impact and effectiveness as learning professionals and as humans. And number 4 of the 365 things I learned during my year of learning is that it's okay to make a quiet commitment. My year of learning is public now, and I started posting what I was doing on the first day, but it was mostly as an accountability measure for myself. It didn't become a so-called movement until a few months later when colleagues saw what I was doing and decided to join me. There is power in taking the plunge first, then bringing others along for the journey when you have some momentum and some conviction around your actions and your story. And once you make that commitment, you'll find there are a few other things that you'll need to do. You'll need to determine your searching and your learning style. And I would encourage you when you're doing that to use your life as inspiration. The things that are happening in your day and in your life can and should be the motivation for the topics and skills and capabilities on which you focus your learning time. I mean, we all do it with Google searches now, right? What are the keywords you can use to find useful learning? Are you a people manager dealing with a difficult team member? Search for courses on how to be an effective people manager or how to have a difficult conversation. Are you finding that you need to help a senior leader develop functional skills? What learning platforms are available that can provide targeted materials for that leader? It is in experimenting with different searching mechanisms that you will be able to do the next important thing. And that is to identify your trusted sources of learning. In my year of learning, I confirmed for myself that I'd much rather read a book than listen to someone talk to me about a book. But that's me. You can tell by my bookshelf behind me, I love books. I have people on my team that would rather listen to a Blinkist summary, and they light up when they tell me the new one that they've discovered. You need to determine what your trusted source of learning is. And once you find that, you'll be able to use that information as you go, even as you continue to experiment with other sources and thoughtfully expand your trusted source of learning list. The next thing I would say you need to do is reflect on and share what you're learning. One of the most powerful parts of my 365 days of learning was not just that I was learning things, but that I was sharing it out to the organization. Taking the time to reflect helps you to apply your learning in different contexts. Almost as valuable as the time spent learning is the time we take to pause, think about what we learned and how it can be applied within the context of our particular challenges and areas for development. Also, determine what to practice and what to keep. You can learn a lot from someone who masters their craft through diligence, practice, and maintaining high standards, even and especially when they start with raw talent. This is actually a quote also from Jerry Seinfeld. I read an article about his life in the Harvard Business Review as one of my 365 learning days. I think he's a brilliant comic, and in this comment, it really clearly states that it's in the commitment to practice that knowledge moves from simply being something that you're aware of to something that you are able to apply. Practice makes permanent, and as you practice, you can see what works and what doesn't. Keep what works and discard the rest. Finally, apply your learning habit to something specific. Starting by learning something new every day is important. Creating a learning habit is important. Figuring out your unique way to move from curious to competent will serve you and help you to grow a great career. Remember, we're all catalysts, you and I. We all have big jobs ahead of us as we reskill and upskill, onboard, and develop the talent that will take our companies to their respective futures, especially as we emerge from our current collective challenge and co-create our new normal. But before we spend a lot of time and money telling people that we know they can change, it would be so powerful to just show them. Thanks, and I'm happy to take questions, Mike. We have some time.
Great, yeah. Thank you so much, Pam A, for a short, impactful, but I think really powerful presentation on this. I think I really appreciate this. Lots of questions coming through, so let's dive in. So
okay.
The first one, actually, I'm pulling out of the chat. It's from Liza or Lisa, so I apologize, Liza or Lisa, if I pronounced it wrong. But it has to do with sort of the balance of formality and informality with this. And she's raising the questions about the levels that you put in once you kind of took it into the second year, the bronze and so on. Can you talk about if you tied that into a strategic plan for learning and productivity, and how do you measure it if you did? Was it kind of formalized at that point, or was it still pretty informal?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that at the beginning it was just it was pretty informal. And being brand new to Kraft Heinz, wanting to say, to come in and say learning is important. I'm a learning evangelist. I'm going to elevate the cause of learning at a company that was hungry for it. I like to tell my team now that side by side with creating a learning culture is the need for a structured capability development program, right? So I can spend all my time saying make time for learning and saying create a learning habit, and just say go out there and find out what your trusted sources are, how you like to learn, spend a couple minutes a day trying new things. But the partnership in that is that in our functional academies, which we have, a marketing, a sales, an R&D, and operations, you name it, all of the functional areas, in addition to leadership and management, that's where people are asking for or hungry for a structured program. I want a curriculum. Everybody's not an exploratory learner, but I figured if I created that cultural momentum and people made space for learning and they saw how it impacted them, then we could point them to the playlists in our corporate university. We could point them to the curricula for some of the areas of our organization, like operations, where really you need to have more structure. We could point them to those things. I like to say, if they come, did we build it? In a little backwards reference to the Field of Dreams, wanting to kind of ignite the learning passion in people around the organization. And then if they come and ask for the learning, we have to be ready to serve up structured learning opportunities that are part of the strategic plan, that are measurable, all of those things.
So a related question coming from Russell. He's asking, did you provide the content for the learning contest, or do people really do it on their own?
That's a great question, because it's part of our corporate university. We have what we call the Kraft Heinz Library. We have relationships and contracts with LinkedIn Learning, with Harvard Business Review, with EBSCO, so a number of different learning platforms that provided just lots of things. And as I went through, as I mentioned, really wanting to make sure when I got here that there was quality stuff in there. I said, well, let me just poke in here and see if this is actually good stuff. And so I confirmed that at the very least, if you will, people could spend as much time as I did learning how to be great managers, learning how to be great leaders, some of the critical skills that we used to call soft skills, right? And then the question is, do we buy or build the things that are more functional? If I have a marketing academy, am I going to go out and find a thought leader to come in and speak, or are we going to create like the Kraft Heinz way of marketing? So it's a bit of both. But for me, I wanted to make sure we had enough of that kind of library material to keep people busy and learning in a way that was, not just busy work, but that was actually useful as we were building up the library of the more specific kind of functional learning, whether that be custom or bought off the shelf or from some partner, vendor partner.
All right, another question here from Michael Kennedy. So, hey, Mike, good to hear from you. I haven't actually talked to you in a little while. He says he loves the year of learning concept. If a head of learning is a couple levels down from the C-suite and believes maybe there's another executive or a more senior person who would be a better person to put in front of such an effort, you did it yourself, obviously.
Sure.
What kind of leader would you, if that was the case, would you consider to be the best fit to do it? What are the qualities that you'd look for in somebody to be the leader of this year of learning concept, if it wasn't somebody like you?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, because after 100 days of me doing it by myself, a colleague of mine who happened to also be in HR, she made her own 100-day commitment. And then some employee who was in Belgium who I'd never met made her own. Since then, we actually put a prize in place in November of last year to say, hey, if you keep your commitments, we'll take a random drawing and then we'll invite everybody to Chicago and we'll have a summit. And of those 20 people who we invited to Chicago, which of course would need to be different if we did it today, I'm sure, we created learning ambassadors. They're from all throughout the organization. And so I do believe that it helped that I was driving. But what I really would expect or encourage you to look for are people who are lifelong learners, people who have impact, who are, not everybody's willing to make a public commitment or to be so open with what they're learning, but to find people who have influence in different areas of the organization, and then have them do it. Because we talk a lot, I think, in our industry about securing sponsorship at the top of the house, which is important. But what this started out being was just kind of a grassroots, granted, I started it, but if I had just done this by myself, it would have just died. We had to have other people who kind of took on the mantle and were really proud to be learning ambassadors. So find your super connectors, find your people who already seem to like to share their culture carriers, they're learners. They have no problem making public commitments and sticking to them. And then once you start having those people be the ones driving this, others will see them and emulate them.
If you got time for one or two more questions.
Sure.
Communications. So this is Angel asking, were your communications through the app? A lot of times communication is a real issue with employees who are busy. So any best practices around communication with a campaign like this?
Yes, without our friends in comms, there's no way this would have gone. It was a global campaign. And so there's kind of a head of internal comms at Kraft Heinz. We have a number of zones, international, Canada, in the US, making sure that they were aware. And I think we're doing a better job this year than even we did last year. But wanting to say, when we started last September, we picked a day where everybody kind of sent out an email. Everybody started sending out in their weekly, monthly newsletters, finding all the different areas in your organization where there's already regular comms and making sure there was a learn like an owner piece there. Now I brought on someone to my team who was specifically focused on L&D communications. And so she's not only posting kind of like, we started the campaign, but we, prizes, trivia tests, we're just all kinds of engagement kind of vehicles to keep people engaged and meeting the commitments that they made. And so that's one of the things that I think is imperative, is to make sure that you have a communication strategy, not just for this campaign, frankly, but for L&D in general. Marketing and communications, I think, at least historically, I have seen that there's opportunities for improvement in the L&D function. And so trying to partner with them and get them excited, and then find our way into the different communication channels rather that already exist at the company.
I like the way you said that, opportunities for improvement in how communication happens. That's a polite way to say it.
Yeah, we try to frame it. I try to frame it that way because, everyone's doing the best they can if you're lucky.
All right, last question, and I apologize for the folks who we're not going to get questions to, um, but I think we've answered some of them. I'm going to pop into the chat in the virtual platform. I'm going to post a link to the article, the cover profile we did on Pam May last fall, so that way you can learn a little bit more about her if you're curious to learn about her work. But last question for you, Pam May. Biggest surprise, good or bad, from going through this initiative? This comes from Karen.
Wow. Okay. So I'll give you a good and a bad. This is not the first time that I've made like a year-long commitment to do something every week, every day. But the last one I did was a weekly commitment. This one was a daily commitment. And after like 100 days, it was a good 90 days where nobody was really saying anything to me back. And I thought, wow, a daily commitment for a whole year. That was ambitious. You could have just said, once, you should have just posted periodically. So I don't know if it was bad, but it certainly was challenging to maintain that level of commitment and to really, as a new member of the senior leadership team, say, I don't think these people are going to think I'm insane, but I really want to step out and say, learning is important. I'm a learning evangelist. And so that was something that that was interesting to kind of walk through every day posting. And the other thing I would say that was definitely good was, we all have long days. I mean, there were certainly days where at 11:30 p.m. I was like, hey, Bassie, you haven't posted anything today. And I would go find an article, and 15 minutes later I would post. And every single time, it's kind of like I say, like working out or anything that you don't actually want to do that's good for you. I would learn something new. I'd find some new idea that actually really either uplifted me after a really stressful day or gave me something interesting to kind of bring up to my team or to my boss. And so it started out being a hypothesis that lifelong, like everyday learning would be enriching. And it actually was, even on the days where I was exhausted and not wanting to complete the mission, if you will. So yeah, those are some things that I learned. Oh, and I'd say the last thing is, I learned that we had some really great stuff. Like, I came in and I said, we always talk about come to our corporate universities, come to our LMSs, and there's really great learning there. And it was really a great feeling to know that literally if someone had to learn something new every day, they could find really great stuff in some of the platforms that we have engaged with. And so that was really great for me and made it easy for me to go out and become this very loud learning evangelist in front of the whole organization.
Well, Pam May, thank you so much for being our catalyst today for lifelong learning and hopefully helping our audience see some new ways that they could do some things. So definitely appreciate you sharing your perspective and being a part of the symposium.
Fantastic. And I will say that I do speak about 365 days of learning a lot on my LinkedIn page. So feel free to come and connect with me, and you can ask me questions, and I'm happy to help. And thanks so much, Mike, for having me and for inviting me to speak on this platform.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.